I think. No, setting up still. We're live, Steve.
Okay.
So hi, Steve. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation to this, podcast.
Thank you.
And I am interested, in talking to creative that have been doing, a consistent job of, spreading their art and giving their talent to the community. So I'm really, I'm really happy that, we can talk. So tell me, how have you been? How is the coronavirus treating you?
Well, so far, I seem as healthy as I ever was. So as far as I can tell, I'm not sick. Haven't been tested. I didn't feel like spending a whole day in a car to get tested because I feel pretty good. I've been pretty careful, and it's been a very interesting time, shall we say.
So how do you see, well, first of all, let's start by the beginning. Let's start by introducing yourself, right? To those people who don't know you, and let's remind also people that this is an interactive, conversation. So we will appreciate any questions or comments that people might have that we can answer or address during this conversation.
Good. So I'm looking on my phone and I don't see it on your Facebook page. But
no.
If it's there, then maybe I'm just doing something wrong.
I am in Facebook. I can see it. It's just a little bit delay when it comes to.
Yeah, I can see it now.
Okay, so let's start first by introducing yourself. You are currently the director of the band Palo, which is one of my favorites Afro-Cuban bands, in local bands here, and. But you have an interesting story also as an educator, as a producer, arranger, right? And you have been really related with the Cuban music, let's say, from a long time, right?
Yeah. Even though you're started Palo in 2003. So actually this month is our 17th.
There you go.
Yeah. And prior to that, the instrument that I studied was the French horn. And I had a nice career as a French horn player for several years as a young man in college. And then when I realized that wasn't my long-term objective, I wanted to write and produce music. I switched to keyboards. And when I did my master's degree at the University of Miami, I was a keyboard player and eventually ended up playing with a Latin band. And that kind of one thing led to another. I ended up being Willie Chirino's musical director for about 7 years, 80s and 90s. And from there, I went on to work with Celia Cruz and a lot of other really amazing artists, had some hits, and just been very blessed. And then at some point, it was around the late 90s, I decided that I should think about being an artist, which is something I always avoided. I didn't really want to be an artist, and that was eventually what became Palo. But I thought about it for a long time. I did a lot of research thinking about it before I started the project. And in 2003, we played our first gig in Hoy Como Ayer in Little Havana.
What made you so interested in Afro-Cuban music?
It's something I don't really understand. My madrina says I have un muerto. I have un ego, a dead guy.
Muerto pegado.
Yeah, she said that she told me his name. She said he was a musician.
Wow.
Afro-Cuban guy in Havana in the 40s. And I guess he's been on my case for a long time.
He's insisting. he wants to make Afro-Cuban music known in Miami, right?
Well, it's funny because I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but I remember I have a distinct memory after my family moved to Miami from Connecticut. I was probably 8 years old, and at the time there were 4 TV stations in Miami, the 3 major networks and the 1 independent. And the independent station would play reruns of old TV shows, including I Love Lucy.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually a very innovative show for the time, but it was a show from the early mid 50s, very of the time. And as a kid, I wasn't even a musician yet, and I would watch the show. And I thought, this Ricky Ricardo guy, he's kind of cool and, wearing that white dinner jacket. And he leaves his wife and goes off to the club to play music. That's neat. And then one day he was doing a cover of Miguelito Valdez, Babalu Aye.
There you go.
And I was hearing it and I wasn't paying that much attention to the drumming. Now that I look back on it, I don't think he was playing much on the conga drum.
Mm.
But there was something fascinating about what he was singing. And I just was like, I don't know what he's singing, but that is the coolest thing I've ever heard.
I bet, right?
And then, fast forward, like, I don't know, 50 years later or so, and I wrote my own song dedicated to the same Orisha, a song called Agua para los Santos. And you were there in Providence, Rhode Island when we debuted the song and performed it.
I know. That was such a nice moment. I was looking for music, Palo music today, to show people. I always do, but I wanted to do it because of the interview. And all I have about that festival is good memories, right? What a nice initiative.
Yeah.
Tell a little bit, can you please let people know a little bit about what that was?
Well, we had made friends with a professor at Brown University of Providence, Rhode Island, Dr. Richard Snyder, big Cuban music fan.
Yeah.
And had gone to Cuba a bunch of times, and eventually, through a series of coincidences, quote unquote, he had us up there and we played a concert and did some workshops, and we went 3 years in a row. And the third year that we were there, Philbert, our conga player at the time, was there, and he had mentioned to me, I always wanted to make a documentary film about all the old rumberos, the old drummers, most of whom have passed away. I said, well, you need to talk to Joe Cardona about that. He's the one that, we make films together sometimes. We left it at that. And then I started talking to Joe about that possible project, and he liked it. We developed the idea, but what we originally developed didn't really come to pass because it was a little too complicated for other reasons. Then I ended up writing this song, and I wanted to include Miriam Martinez on the song. And I wanted to involve the whole band in writing and helping produce. And the 4th year that we went up, it was the last year of the foundation that was funding this initiative at Brown University. So I told Richard Snyder about the idea of maybe recording the song. And he goes, yeah, we can hook that up. And then I told Joe about it, and he goes, oh, that's our film. And I kind of shifted my thinking with him. So we ended up recording and performing the song, and also with everyone that was there, yourself and a whole bunch of other incredible people that were there for that weekend. It became a film and got a bunch of awards and played all over PBS, all over the country. And it's still available. It's called Ivy League Rumba. So if anyone wants to see the film, they can go on pbs.org, search for Ivy League Rumba, and it's free there. Oh, by the way, I guess people can ask questions. Is that something you want to tell people?
Yeah, I was posting while you were talking at the beginning, telling people that we are, eager to answer any questions or look at any comments, that people might have. for me, it was really refreshing because when I see a lot of festivals about Cuban music here in the US in general, in particular in Miami, the Afro-Cuban element is not highlighted as I think it should be, because there's not, I don't think here, a lot of awareness of how important, how crucial Afro-Cuban culture is for, Cuban music, right? Or for music in general. So the fact that people like you, Richard, were able to put together and join this festival, and with the focus on celebrating Afro-Cuban music and Afro-Cuban culture, that was so on point, I think, so needed. It's so important because I think there's so many talents here that are formed and express themselves through this language. And the organization of this festival was really remarkable, I have to say. And let me ask you one question about this. I've always heard that Cuban music in the US is difficult to market, whatever. But people like you make me feel otherwise, because even though it could be risky or there's not such a market yet for that, people like you, you try to make it happen with what it is. So what would you say about it?
Well, I mean, if you look back in the history of the United States, there have been several waves of Cuban influenced or Afro-Latin music, but mostly Cuban music, way back to the peanut vendor and the whole conga craze in the 30s, then mambo and all these other different waves. The music is magical. It just pulls people in. It's got something special. And I kind of feel like there's something about the African influence that has some sort of special magic to it. And it's just an infectious, alluring kind of a sound. And American ears have always perked up to that. As an independent artist, I've studied a lot about the market in the past 10 or 15 years. And I realized that if you can figure out the new music industry, which a lot of people haven't taken the time to do that, you can start to actually create awareness about what you're doing. If people like your music and you invest some time and thought into marketing yourself, you can get the word out there. We've got right now that song that a lot of people love. It's called Almonte. And Almonte is on its way to 14 million views on YouTube.
There you go.
That's all just because I've been working on the digital marketing and figuring out how YouTube works with an associate of mine, Joe Dillman. And it's been a real learning experience, but what it's done is it's started to create enough revenue so that it kind of pays for itself, which is great, especially now when we can't do a concert in the middle of a pandemic, but there's still some cash flow coming in. It's very helpful. So these are the kind of things I teach my students. I'm a college professor at Miami-Dade College, and I teach music business and music production, North Campus. And I teach them all about this stuff that I've learned. So it's really nice to be able to have both, the interchange between myself and the students. They teach me a lot. And I'm not teaching them out of a book. I actually write the books for my classes and give it to them for free on a PDF. So if there's anyone actually listening to this podcast or the live stream, because we're live on Facebook, and if anyone is interested in finding out some of this information, musician or just another person who maybe has a YouTube channel, feel free to get in contact with me, and we'll talk about it, because it's a lot of musicians right now, they're kind of dejected because they see that Spotify, it's different. It's a different business model. And a lot of musicians don't understand it. And they think that it's a ripoff, and it's really not. It's actually, if you can get enough people who like your music to be aware of you. It's a better deal than it used to be, that when you would sell a CD for $20 and get 9 cents for your song. And that was great because if it sold, a whole bunch, you would get 9 cents times X, but it's actually a much better deal now. I'll give you an example. That almost 14 million views on YouTube of Almonte, it's not 14 million different people. It's a lot of the same people listening to the song multiple times because they like it.
Okay. All right.
And every time they listen to the song, a little tiny cash register goes cha-ching, 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 and it adds up. So the trick is, how do you, first of all, if you have music that people like, how do you get it out there? How do you use the model of YouTube to actually proactively go after people? And I've been just kind of trying to do marketing, just learning it myself since I had Palo. MySpace, when we started the band, MySpace didn't even exist yet.
Wow. It's been the same amount of time that I have been here in Miami. I am very glad that we're talking about this. I've been also very interested in how the music industry works, because I've told you many times, I've seen so many talents here that are not really connected or are not really doing much when it comes to the market, the music market, because I think there's a missing link, which is the marketing, all that stuff that makes a difference, right? That a lot of people don't have it, and a lot of people, I don't think people are so willing to do it, right? But if you don't do it, it makes a whole difference.
What's interesting is an artist, I don't think an artist should really start out worrying too much about business. I think they should get in touch with their soul and figure out what they want to do, and don't worry about being successful. Whatever successful means to you, you get to define for yourself. I think I always tell my students, probably the worst thought that you could have when you start making your art is, what could I do that's going to make money? That's not the way artists should think, in my opinion. You should think, what is it I want to do? Mm-hmm. Just like,
but there's a moment that you need to go to the next level, right?
Correct.
In order to go to the next level, you have to learn all the stuff.
At that point, when you're proud of what you do and you feel good about it, then you need to learn the industry that you're in. If you want to make sandwiches and have that be your life, and you're passionate about making sandwiches and everyone loves your sandwiches, I would say, first of all, don't go open a sandwich shop, because you don't know the business yet. Go work in a sandwich shop for a year, learn everything that they do, learn what they do right, learn what you would do different, and then open your sandwich shop.
There you go. Yeah. Steve, let's go back a little bit in history. I think it's really interesting the moments that you work for Willie Chirino, and then also you collaborate with many different local important musicians, including Celia Cruz, etc. What can you tell me about that time?
It was an amazing thing when I started working with Willie. I believe he got a referral from somebody that I had worked with on another team somewhere. And I was a little bit confused why this Cuban artist would want somebody who had limited experience in Latin music. Then I figured it out when we met at his house, and we kind of worked together for a while in his studio. I realized that he didn't want to do everything as like traditional salsa. He wanted to kind of experiment a little bit, get some other sounds in there. And we kind of, we had a lot of very compatible concepts. I would give him an idea, he would like it. He would have an idea, I would be able to execute it. So it was a lot of fun. He was a great mentor, very generous teacher. And luckily I got la clave. I understood the clave enough so I wasn't messing everything up. And that worked, and we immediately had success together. The first salsa arrangement I ever wrote, I think I was 27 years old, a song called Lo que está pa ti, written by the great late Titi Soto. And that song was, you know, a hit for Willie, and we went on to from there and had a bunch of hits, including Medias Negras, Oxígeno, Mr. Don't Touch the Banana, Yo No Saber de Banana, Perdón. That was me playing the gringo.
Making fun of yourself. That's the best way to do it. You know?
Yeah, that was funny. We were in the studio, and there was like this mambo that I had written in the middle of the song, and there were Willie and a couple other band members were hanging around, and I said, "Hey Willie, it might be funny in this part if like somebody came on and he was doing the voice of the gringo that was like at the tambor or whatever, and he thought that the fruit was a buffet, and he said something." And Willie goes, "Oh, that's a great idea." And I said, "Well, who's gonna do the voice of the gringo?" And all three of the guys looked at me and said, just like like that.
The gringoist of the gringos.
Right. So forever, I've heard from a lot of people who came from Cuba that even though Willie's music was supposed to be banned, that song was played at parties, and you know, a lot of the songs that I worked on.
In the 90s, it was crazy because he was supposedly politically prohibited, right? We couldn't listen to him anywhere, but we would listen to him everywhere, all parties, everywhere, even in places like for institutions that, you know, parties that people were not supposed to play, you would play it. It was so famous. And we enjoyed so much. It was great, you know.
That was a big break for me. And then from there, a lot of great things happened. I met some people who ended up hiring me to work with Ricardo Montaner. And I had a #1 song as a songwriter with Ricardo, and produced a bunch of stuff. We had a lot of hits together. So that was more Latin pop. Some of it had a little bit, he likes the Cuban vibe. So we, you know, some of the stuff had sort of a Cuban sound to it. And I eventually also ended up doing a bunch of different albums with Celia Cruz, and worked on a few hit songs with her.
Tell me something about Celia Cruz. So, yesterday, I think it was another, I guess it's 17th anniversary, right? Of her.
Yeah.
I remember, like, when she died, I just came. It was at the same moment.
Wow. As an arranger, which was my role on most of the stuff that I worked on with Celia, I would have a producer. In one of the cases, it was Willie Chirino, and some of the other albums were another producer, Oscar Gomez, a Cuban guy who lives in Madrid. And I didn't have a lot of contact with her. What I would do is I would record all of the tracks in my studio, hand it over, and then they would record Celia's vocals in another studio. On a few occasions, I did get to meet her and hang out with her, and just the most humble, down-to-earth, friendly, sweet, caring lady, very smart. You can tell right away. Very wise person. And I just consider that one of the biggest blessings in my life. And I'm very proud of all the music that I did for her. Just some great stuff. And we got to hang out a little bit at the debut concert in New York at Radio City Music Hall for the Tropical Tribute to the Beatles album, where she was there, and Cheo Feliciano and Puente and all these people who were performing on my arrangements. So imagine I was there with like an all-star. And Cheo was extremely nice to me, and told me he loved my arrangement. He put it in his permanent repertoire and all these different compliments. He's a very, very great guy. And Tito was like just funny. A character, just a great guy to hang out with. He's funny.
Such a legend, musically speaking, right?
Yep. And he stuck up for Cuban music like nobody. I mean, he was born, I guess, in New York, but Puerto Rican descent. And but he was like, "Stop calling it salsa. Salsa's ketchup. This is Cuban music."
That's what he said.
He was a stickler about that. He was very proud of calling it Cuban music.
And tell me, Palo, you have been through different phases with the band, right? Now I understand that there's new cast, yeah, right? You have new people in the band.
Yeah, what happened was the original 5 members were myself. I founded the band. Leslie Cartaya was the first person that I brought in, the lead singer. The percussion guys were Raimero Lalde on timbales, Phil Armenteros on congas, and Ed Kaye on the sax. And we recorded our third album together, which is Yo Quiero Guarachar. And
that was a Grammy one?
No, the Grammy nomination was the second one, which was Palo Live.
There you go.
And shortly after recording the third album, Ed Kaye resigned from the band. And then maybe about a year or so after that, Filbert left the band. So there were 3 original members, and we had a new sax player. We kind of alternated sax players for a while and had sort of 2 or 3 switching off. And our new conga player was Diron Gallardo, and he's still with the band now. So around I don't know, maybe 9 or 10 months ago, Leslie and Raymond told me that they were leaving, and of course, I was just happy to have them in the band for so long. And when they told me that, I saw it as an opportunity to kind of renew the project. So now Palo is 7 pieces. We've got 3 lead singers, incredibly talented and all very unique.
Who are they? Tell me their names.
Well, we've got a veteran who's been around, and a lot of people have seen him, Julio Cesar Delet, and he is just marvelous. He can do anything. Sonero, just a great talent, great personality. We've got this amazing multi-talented person. Her name is Dana Santiago, and she's a great singer and a marvelous flute player and an incredible hand percussion player. Plays the authentic Cuban style, Santiago style maracas, and
nice.
And her flute playing is just marvelous. And she's got this incredible presence.
Yeah, she's
beautiful dancer, gorgeous gal. And finally, this firecracker of a talent, Miriam Martinez. Miriam turned, I think, maybe 25 a few months ago. And she is so good that she doesn't know how good she is. I keep telling her. She was funny because she sings a lot of different kinds of music. She's done some tropical music and different stuff, but mostly I think she's been singing maybe R&B and pop and different things like that. Has a lot of very, very experienced. And when she came into the band, she was kind of concerned because she said, listen, yo no soy sonera, I don't improvise. And she was, I sensed that she was a little bit insecure about that because Leslie, even though Leslie, when she started, she really wasn't that, but she bloomed into this incredible improviser. And I told Miriam, listen, don't worry about it. Our first phase, all you need to do is just learn the material so we can do our gigs.
Yeah.
And if you want to just kind of copy what Leslie was doing, that's fine. Toward the end of our rehearsals, before we started our first gig in Ball and Chain, and this was, I guess, around January, she started messing around a little bit in the rehearsal. And I said, I knew you would be able to do it. And she did it on the gig, and it was great. And I've got video of it. It's great. She's a natural. She's
nice.
So between those 3, I'm just in heaven because I've got 3 great singers and we can do all kinds of harmonies. We have the other 2 permanent members are Otto, which Otto is just this great timbale player. He's a multi-percussionist. Otto plays congas, he plays bata, he plays timbal. So in our band, he's mostly playing timbal. Everybody sings background vocals. We've got Aldo Salven on saxophone, who is a master. We can call him Dr. Aldo Salven now because, like you, he got his doctorate at the University of Miami. Just a brilliant man, great musician, fantastic guy. Yo tengo uno guerrero ahí, asombroso. I really have a powerful team.
So cool.
What ended up happening was, as soon as we kind of started really getting comfortable with the material and playing together, the virus happened.
So you haven't been able to taste really the band, right? That much outside.
Well, the thing is now I'm in the process of customizing all the new songs that I have written for this personnel. So that's going to be exciting. I'm working on some songs that I'm really happy about, and I just can't wait to record them. Now I'm working with our technical team to figure out the most reasonably safe way to record in a recording studio without risking anyone's health too much. I mean, I guess there's nothing guaranteed, but you have to think about it because people are singing and the coronavirus is spread through the air. So, you have to really put some thought into it. Nobody's going to be singing with a mask on or playing a saxophone.
I know. I miss so much, going to a live concert. Oh my God.
Yeah, well, you're one of our, stalwarts. When I look out in the audience with ball and chain and you're out there, I'm like, yeah, la familia.
I know, I miss that, but we're living different times now. Tell me a little bit. I know you have a great experience, the band in Europe, right? You were able to play for Alexander Abreu, right?
Yeah, it was a really amazing experience. I can be very impatient, and I don't like to be passive. So I guess maybe that's why I do the marketing the way I do, because I don't want to just wait around for the phone to ring. In 2015, there were a couple of journalists in Europe who had discovered Palo on however they did, and they wrote about us. And that was a big help. And they passed our name on to a festival promoter, this festival called Tempo Latino. It's in France, in a little place called Vic Fezensac. And Eric, who runs the festival, really loved Palo, and he wanted us to come, but we didn't have an agent, and it's kind of logistically very difficult financially to go from the United States to Europe just to play one show. The next year, I hired Oli Espaillat, one of my former students, to be an intern, and I told him, go on the internet and do some research. From what I can tell, the band that plays the most similar music to us, that's touring the most, is a band called Havana de Primera with this guy, Alexander Abreu. And they're out of Cuba, and they play timba. And I want you to go online and just figure out everything you can figure out, find out where they're going, what they're doing, where they're playing, just so I have the information. And he did a very good job, former student of mine. And at the time, Cuba didn't really have the internet. That was 2015. But Oli was able to get in touch with this guy who was their tour manager and had brought them to the States and to Europe a couple times. A really nice man named Christian Munoz out of Canada. Big Cuban music fan. So Christian started to try and help us. He brought us up to Canada. We did a couple things. And when we met face to face, we kind of bonded. And ever since then, he was trying to help us. So he ended up doing us a favor. He went to this festival for what they call WOMEX, the World Music Exposition. And it was in Budapest that year. He had a place to stay in Budapest. He went, all I did was pay for his ticket to get into the thing. And through once again, a series of coincidences, he bumps into a guy that he knew who introduced him to the guy who ended up being our agent. When we had an agent, we were able to put together a tour, and that's how we were able to go to Tempo Latino. The cutest part of the story is Eric early on told me, we would communicate in Spanish because I don't speak French and he doesn't speak English. Ustedes son los padrinos del festival. And I didn't know what that meant. They were like a little pamphlet and stuff, but I didn't really realize it. When we finally got to this bullfighting ring, because that's one of the things that little town was famous for. Bullfighting, this festival, and something like Armagnac or some sort of after dinner drink. Eric, we got there and he hugged us and kissed us and told us how happy he was, and he was giving us a little tour, and the volunteers had already set up the backstage area, and there was like this wall of fame, and it was all the padrinos del festival, all like the godparents of the festival throughout all the 23 years that they had the festival.
Nice.
Celia Cruz, Cheo Feliciano, Tito Puente, Oscar de Leon, and all these superstars, and then Palo. And I had this stupid look on my face, I guess. And he started laughing, and I said, "Why are you laughing?" He said, "Because I'm looking at your face." And I said, "Well, I'm sorry, but I didn't really realize what this signified until right now." And he goes, "Yeah, you're the first independent artist I've ever had to be Padrino del Festival." And
that's awesome.
They take it seriously over there. And when we did our show, we were opening for Habana de Primero, the one that I used as the model to try and put together this information. We opened for them.
How many people were in the audience?
Eventually, I think it was about 10,000. We were the opening act, and when we started, it was still light out, and it was getting full. By the end of our set, that crowd, and it was a lot, mostly European people. And it's a great vibe, that concert. People drive from all over and they go camping, and it's incredible. That crowd was so into us that when I ended the concert right on time because there's like a digital clock there. And the crowd was going nuts. And our last song has this coro that's, La Habana. And the crowd just kept singing. We had stopped, and Eric was trying to like say something on the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen," they wouldn't let him talk. And he turned around to me and
they were hooked up with Havana.
He turned around to me and said, "Maestro, you can play one encore." So we did an encore. At the end of the concert, when Habana de Primero was playing, I was dead. I was down in the dressing room. Leslie Filbert and Raymond were standing by the side of the stage. Habana de Primera is just massacring the crowd. They love him. And
that's so good. That's so good.
In the middle of a song, you can see, there's video of it somewhere. He pulls his mic down. He goes and whispers into the ear of the lead coro guy. They change the coro and they start singing Palo, Palo, and he waves them on stage. Leslie grabs a mic and starts improvising and just slaughtering everybody. The two guys got on the percussion. At the end of the song, Alexander, a resident of Havana, gave what I thought it was very generous of him to invite us up. But he made a statement that I kind of think I know where he's coming from. "Señores, son de Miami, pero son cubanos." And the crowd went nuts.
The other side of the story.
Yeah, and I think it was kind of like his seal of approval. Very generous gesture on his part. He didn't need to invite us up. He didn't need to say that.
Yeah.
The next day, all the DJs around the whole festival were telling me that everybody that was coming up to their DJ booth was asking about Palo.
Cool.
There was a big buzz. And then when we got back to Miami, I saw our social media blow up from everybody from France, Italy, Germany, Spain. And that was kind of the beginning of us getting to a different level. And it was just an incredible blessing, an amazing experience.
Imagine what would it be a world in which, regularly bands from Cuba and outside Cuba could, collaborate more. That would be amazing, right? Because that's what music is supposed to do, to, put people together.
Well, we did that song that we mentioned earlier in the interview, Agua para los Santos, that has Pedro Martinez and December Bueno. And we've known December since the early 2000s when we were hanging around Hoy Como Ayer, and he had different kind of incarnations of different bands they had in Miami. He had Cuiche. Remember that?
Yes, of course. I wrote about it. I was one of those who was there all the time.
Well, you are a warrior too for our music and our culture, and thank God that there are people that are documenting and understanding the kind of all the different aspects of what we do, because I certainly don't have the time or interest to do much of that, and thank God that you're doing it.
Thank you. No, I just realized that I don't think people should be dead to be recognized, you know? And this is usually what happens, especially when it comes to the history of diasporas, you know? And the Cuban musical diaspora, I think, is such an important thing when it comes to the level of talent, when it comes to the influence that they are doing in all the scenes that they are living. You know, in Miami, not only Miami, everywhere in the world, you know. And then I think it's important to document what is going on, because I think it's a very, I would say it's a very interesting process that is taking place since the 90s, where Cuban music is made outside the what you call the traditional frontiers of what is known as Cuban music, right? Which is the island.
Mm-hmm.
And this phenomenon is it's global. It's global. It's Cuban music made outside Cuba through the internet, through collaborations, and in different cities. And these there are Cuban scenes everywhere, and they are permeating, because you know how strong Cuban music is, right? So this I think these things are permeating the places where these musicians are living. You can see that in Madrid. You know, there's a lot of jazz Cuban musicians that are really making a difference when it comes to the Spaniards thing. And here in Miami, even though what you see, you know, sometimes promoted is one side of the story, there are so many other stories here, right? About musicians.
There are so many incredibly talented musicians just in South Florida, and all kinds of genres, not just Cuban music or Latin music, all kinds of genres. It's very underestimated.
Totally.
When you compare the scenes in other major cities, we stand right there. The talent is just incredible, and my thing is, I just kind of wish that some of the really talented people would maybe take one class with me and just kind of get a little more oriented, because even if they improve their profit and loss just by a little bit, that would help sustain their career, and they wouldn't have to, you know, compromise it as much. And I've seen in all genres some great jazz musicians in South Florida, great, wonderful original music. And you know, I look on their YouTube channel. I'm enjoying a YouTube, and the thing's been up there for 2 years and has got 64 views. And it's like, this is terrible. The world needs to hear this music.
I know.
This music is healing. It's magical. The powers of the music are just magical, and no one. I'll put it this way: if you know how to work YouTube, you can set it up so they will find you. And right now, a lot of these musicians are not being found. And it's really not that difficult to do. Once you understand the way the industry works and the law and all this kind of stuff, it can be done. But I'm a Miami guy. I love South Florida. I love Miami. I've lived in Dade County since, I don't know, 1967. And I just think the music that I make now with Palo probably couldn't have happened anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, if you think about it, there's so much music that is being produced every day in Miami as we speak, because a lot of musicians have studios, right? But sometimes the music don't go from there, right? Don't go from the studio or the immediate, you know, exposure, because we are lacking. I think people are lacking, you know, that element of, you know, how to, you know, put your music out there so people can know, because a lot of people don't know. And people still believe that things are not happening in Miami, that all the Cuban music that is good is made in Havana or in Cuba, and that is not the case.
Prejudice. That's, you know, a lot of people have their snobbery. You know, I've sort of detected some of that, that because Palo is not in Cuba, we don't reside there, or maybe they're making a judgment about me because I'm not Latin, I'm not Cuban. It doesn't matter. I don't do it to impress people. I do it for other reasons. And I must say though that there are some artists in Miami. I can name a couple off the top of my head. Timba Live and Tony Sucar. Those are two outfits that have figured out how to make wonderful music and put together impressive videos and get the views and sustain. I mean, both of them have been around. Timba Live has been around for quite a while. And it's just marvelous, great musicians, great singers, fantastic production. Tony is just, Tony's the only guy, Tony Sucar is the only guy in town that works harder than Steve Roitstein. This guy is a machine. I don't know how he does it, but he is impressive, and his music has reached all over the world.
I was able to saw his, to witness a concert of his salsa version of Michael Jackson hits. That was so good.
Yep. Yeah, he's
insane. He's crazy.
Great musician, wonderful personality, very generous man. Just good, and it's nice to see that.
Steve, let's talk a little bit about current topics, not only the pandemic, but race topics, because we can talk about whatever we want, especially when it comes to the music and the fact that you're working with musicians that are not your same race, your same culture. How do you deal with that? What do you think could be done locally to improve the situation as we speak?
This is a human issue. This is not a geographical issue. Prejudice is something that is learned. So I feel like I haven't stopped being an optimist because I feel like it can be unlearned. I don't know if a lot of people out there know who Cándido Calmero is. Cándido, one of the great rumberos, I think he's in his mid-90s now, or maybe somewhere around that. When we did Ivy League Rumba, he lives in New York, but he was down, and we were able to record Cándido for an interview. Just this great master, and they sat him down, and it was in WDNA. So WDNA was generous enough to lend us a nice looking, like where they have the music library. And so the lighting was set up and the camera and the sound and everything. And Joe Cardona was doing the interview, and he's very good at interviewing. He usually will throw out kind of a very neutral question at the beginning to kind of put someone at ease. And I forget what he asked. And I'm going to try to do it in English, what Cándido said. He said, "With your permission, before I answer your question, I would like to give thanks to all the ancestors that came to the New World against their will and brought us this wonderful culture that lives to this day." And by the time he was done, there were tears rolling down my face because there's something about that lineage that means something.
Yeah.
And I knew exactly what he was saying. And it's very unfortunate. And I feel that what people are calling racism, I don't use that word racism very often because the meaning of it depends on who's saying it and what they mean by it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe prejudice is a more understood word for me. I'll give you an example of the irony of prejudice. I think it was around 2015 or so. Palo was playing a show in Ball and Chain. I wrote about it recently in Facebook. And I got off the stage, and it was a very high energy concert, and the place was packed, and there were 3 couples together. I could tell they were Cuban the way they were talking, and they called me over to where they were. And they were all I didn't do a DNA test, but they looked like they were pretty much white. Of course, who knows? And they were complimenting me and asking me, how's it possible that an American guy can, they were trying to be complimentary. Very nice, I thought. And then one of the women asked me, "So what do you think about President Obama's initiative going to Cuba?" And at the time, I really didn't want to get into any discussion about politics. So I tried to sidestep the question. Said, I don't really feel like qualified to have an opinion. I'm not Cuban. And her response to that was, well, it doesn't matter. Cuba's all black anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I took about 4 or 5 seconds and I took a breath and I said, and this was all in Spanish. And I said, ma'am, do you have any idea why your statement could be a little bit offensive to me? And by then, they had
all that you have heard, by the way, is music made by black people.
Well, hold on. I'm going to tell you, because I remember word for word what I said. They all had their drinks down now, and they were all having serious looks on their face. And I said, the 5 people that are on the stage with me, they're not employees only. We're like a family. We make music together. We teach each other when we're in the studio, when we write songs together, when we perform together. And you could see all different shades of skin tone there. So maybe you can understand why I thought that was offensive, what you said to me. Apart from that, most of the music that you heard tonight, and most pop music in general, is based on African music. So for you to make a statement like that, I think maybe you need to think about it a little bit before you say something like that. And I turned and walked away because I didn't really want to get more into it. And ever since then, when I hear someone saying something, I try not to attack them.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make people think. And I have compassion for prejudiced people too, because I'm prejudiced too. We all are.
We all are.
It's part of the human condition. What I try to do is keep my in check and be aware of it. And it's a constant thing. But I have compassion for someone like that too, because they probably just learned those little phrases.
Absolutely.
El negro, si no lo hace en la entrada, lo hace en la salida. All these like generalisms.
But they repeat it and they don't understand, or they don't realize that by doing that, they are promulgating a culture of intolerance.
You know what my phrase is with a lot of Cubans? ¿Y tu abuela dónde está?
Exacto.
It's like you're coming off as, we sing a song like that. We cover a song by El Guayabero, who was Faustino Aramas. It's called Oye el Consejo. We don't record it because it can come off weird sometimes. But basically, the song is singing to women who are mixed race and over-treating their hair and trying to pass off as something they're not. And I kind of like it because, in a way, the core message of the song is be proud of who you are. Don't try and hide it. It dice, que pelo más raro tiene, que pasa más colorado. And he's like calling them out and saying, if you keep using those hair products, you're going to go bald. And the what we call racism casually is very different in the Caribbean than it is in the United States. But I think one of the things that I would like to see more of is conversations, just conversations. I can give as much time as I need to, as I possibly can, to listen to a person of color, Black or any color, and just have them share with me the experiences that they've had being Black in the United States or wherever they came from. And sometimes it's shocking because someone who, I'm Jewish, but I'm a white guy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't go through those experiences.
Mm.
I don't have to tell somebody, I don't have kids, but if I did, I don't have to tell them, of course I would tell them, be respectful of everybody. Don't mouth off to the cop, of course. But it's a different conversation when you're Black.
Yeah.
And, in the music business, there's all kinds of unacceptable behavior happening right now with artists. I have a friend who works in a record company, and it's a good job for him, but he's got an ethical issue because he's seeing kind of like Latin artists get screwed. And a lot of them don't have maybe the wherewithal or maybe the funds to go hire an attorney. And they see this as an opportunity, and it's kind of sad. maybe it is an opportunity. But what I hold on to the hope that maybe there's a way to do business and to treat each other in an ethically and fair way where we can still all benefit from it. But first, I think we all have a lot of work to do on ourselves. And I include myself in that group.
Thank you, Steve. Let's see the questions. There was one question that was made to you before.
Yeah, that happened earlier today. My friend Michael.
Okay. Okay. We have some questions here. So we have Richard. Hi, Richard. And we have people from your family, I think. The question that Matthew Roitstein does is, how do you make a Cuban sandwich? A Cuban sandwich.
I'm not the one to ask.
Let's say openly that you are one of the best cook of Cuban food ever.
Well, I learned from my dear friend, Chef Douglas Rodriguez, because I didn't know it at the time. Palo was playing in his restaurant on South Beach for quite a while. And we kind of collaborated on something we called the Cuban sandwich. It was
Cuban, that's what he's asking.
Oh, okay, a Cuban sandwich. What Doug did was he custom made the bread. So it wasn't regular Cuban bread. It was like a custom made roll with caraway seeds in it. So it was already kind of like rye bread. Instead of the ham, it was turkey ham. So it was all set up to avoid pork. Instead of the roast pork, it was like a brisket beef cut up in there. I think might have been some Swiss cheese, which is already definitely not kosher, but okay. There was some pickle. But basically it was very close to a Cuban sandwich. So the Cuban sandwich, I think they served it one night and that was it.
Okay. So we have another question made by Michael Mott. How do you become a part of the Jaco Pastorius big band and wind up on the birthday album? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier in the interview, the instrument that I studied was the French horn. And when I was a very young guy, like 19 years old at the University of Miami, I was already doing a lot of gigs as a freelance French horn player, pit orchestras, symphony orchestras, things like that. Jaco, I had actually known about Jaco Pastorius, the great bass player, composer, since I was in junior high school, because my brother, David Roitstein, who's, by the way, Matthew Roitstein is my nephew and a fantastic,
that's your nephew, yeah.
Fantastic musician, great flute player. He's associate principal in the Houston Symphony. His dad, my brother David, knew about Jaco when I was still in junior high. So I had heard my brother talking about this guy, Jaco. And so when I was at the University of Miami, I was already interested in jazz, but I was playing, there would be no jazz gigs for a French horn player. Jaco loved the French horn. When Jaco would see me around, he would call me Little Roit. Like he knew I was my brother's little brother. And when Jaco had a birthday concert, I think it was 1980 or something, or somewhere around there. I was still playing the French horn. And they booked this big club, full band, the Brecker brothers, Peter Erskine, all these incredible musicians.
Wow.
And I was just there playing the French horn. And that ended up, it wasn't intended to be an album at the time. It was recorded, but after Jaco passed away, they turned it into an album. And there's a cut on the album where he makes the introductions. And the first person he introduces, he says, Mr. Roitstein. I'm the first one that he introduced in the whole thing. So that was an incredible thing. People all around the country, when a musician who's a Jaco freak, they'll see my name on a credit card or something, and they'll say, "You're not the same guy who's playing French horn on the Jaco Pastorius album, are you?" Oh, yes.
How was playing with him? Like, he was such a incredible figure.
Amazing. I got to see him several times. At this point, you think, God, if we had cell phones, I could have recorded it. There was one time when I was an undergrad at Miami where we heard these rumors in the jazz department that Jocko was going to be playing at the Village Inn, which was a place in Coconut Grove that had music. And so we just went on a hope. And it turned out Jocko came with 2 conga players. One of them was Patato, and the other one was either Bobby Thomas or Edmoka, Oscar. There's a controversy. I thought it was Bobby Thomas. Oscar said it was him. I'll take Oscar word for it. And it was just a 2-hour jam of Jocko and 2 conga players and 2 incredible conga players. And my brother always told me when he first tried to sit in with Jocko playing with Ira Sullivan, my brother said, they don't need it. When this guy's on stage, they don't need a piano. He's bass and piano and everything.
Everything. He had all the music in his mind. You could tell when he was playing bass that he was playing everything beyond just accompanying, right?
Incredible. He could groove. I mean, it's not like, he was all that stuff and not grooving. I mean, he was the funkiest, one of the funkiest jazz bass players.
I would say he's one of the most influential bass players for Cuban musicians. I can see a lot of influence in, the way a lot of Cuban bass players play in, in his sound. You can recognize it.
At the University of Miami, getting a jazz education is very interesting because they'll point out who they consider the innovators, the people who changed the idiom on their instrument, like Charlie Parker, John Coltrane, Miles Davis, and Jocko. Jocko changed the language, the vocabulary on the instrument of bass. And since then, I'm not sure there's really exactly been another person who's done that on that instrument.
There are many crazy bass players around there, but I don't think anything like him, honestly.
Yeah, he was one of a kind and tremendo personaje.
Thank you so much, Steve. It's been an hour and 4 minutes. And it's been really nice. Thank you so much. But I think it's enough. People are gonna get sick and tired of us talking.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Thanks everyone who is checking this out, and hopefully, if you like the music, maybe you can check us out. If you haven't seen our stuff on YouTube, everything is Go Palo, so just find us there. And everyone, be safe. Make it through this damn virus so we can all have a concert together again at some point.
I know. Can't wait. Okay, take care. Ciao.
Right, thanks.
Ciao, everybody.